Hello. My name is Isolde Rain, and the night my sister called me from the police station, covered in blood, cuffed like a criminal, while her husband smiled for the cameras, was the night I stopped being quiet. You want to know how a whole city got turned upside down? It started with a ringtone, and the second time it rang, I didn't hesitate. The ring sliced through the dark like a blade through sleep. For a second, I thought it was the wind, or maybe a dream echoing in my half-waking mind. Then the sound came again, sharp, high, relentless. My hand fumbled for the phone on the nightstand. The glow of the screen burned my eyes. Leora. It had been months since I'd seen her name light up my phone. The last message she sent was a photo of a lake house dinner. Perfect lighting, perfect husband, perfect smile. I remember staring at that image, wondering how someone could look so happy while walking through the ruins of herself. When I answered, her voice was a whisper shredded by panic. Isolde, I'm at the station. He hurt me. They believe him. My chest clenched. What do you mean, they believe him? What happened? He said I attacked him. They think I started it. A breath, trembling, broken. There's blood, it's mine. Then silence. The kind that isn't quiet. It presses in, heavy, suffocating. For a moment, I couldn't move. My body knew before my mind caught up. This was real. The air in my bedroom felt like ice against my throat. The digital clock blinked 3:17 a.m. I grabbed the nearest hoodie, the one with old press badges stitched to the pocket, a relic from when I used to chase truth for a living. Tonight, truth had found me again, uninvited. Outside, the fog curled low across the empty street. My car engine coughed to life, headlights slicing the mist. Spokane was a ghost town at this hour. Silent intersections, red lights blinking in endless rhythm. I didn't feel the cold through the windshield. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel until the leather groaned. Every few blocks, the past reached up like black ice beneath my tires. The last time Leora called crying, I told myself she'd exaggerate things. That's what Mom used to say. You always make drama out of nothing. I deleted her voicemail that night. A week later, she stopped answering. The drive took 12 minutes, but it felt like crossing years. The precinct's fluorescent sign flickered against the fog as I pulled in. A coffee cup sat half-frozen on the sidewalk, abandoned by some officer who still believed in caffeine more than conscience. Inside, the building smelled of bleach and old anger. A young cop behind the front desk looked up, bored. I'm here for my sister, Leora Rain. She called me. She's being held here. He scanned the logbook, squinting at the screen. Only her spouse or legal guardian can access case information, ma'am. She doesn't have a guardian, and her spouse is the one who beat her. He looked up, uneasy but firm. I can't share details without authorization. My heartbeat filled the space between us. I'm her sister, I said, quieter now, because yelling had failed too many women before me. He shrugged. Policy. Over his shoulder. Through a glass panel, I saw cash and dryer. Even in the harsh overhead lights, he looked like a magazine cover, pressed shirt, expensive watch, a smear of someone else's blood across his collar. 2 officers stood with him, listening as he gestured with open palms, the picture of calm sincerity. He met my eyes for a fraction of a second, then smiled. That smile had no warmth, just calculation. I felt my breath stutter, memories flooding in like bad weather. The first Thanksgiving after Leora married him. The way he'd cornered me by the sink, asking if I was jealous of people who know how to keep a man. Leora had laughed it off. I hadn't. Now, here he was again, charming the people who should have been cuffing him. I turned back to the desk. "You're detaining the wrong damn person," I said. The officer stiffened. "Ma'am." But I was already moving down the hall. The air hummed with fluorescent indifference. A sergeant blocked my path, arms crossed. "Miss, you can't be back here. My sister called for help." "Your sister is under investigation." "For being beaten?" He exhaled through his nose, a practiced sigh of authority. "Please wait in the lobby." Through a half-open door, I caught a glimpse. Leora sitting on a metal chair, arms wrapped around herself, a blanket draped over her shoulders, spotted dark near the hem. Her hair stuck to her cheek. Her eyes looked at something far away. I tried to step closer, but the sergeant's hand lifted, palm flat, like a stop sign. "She's being processed." Processed. The words scraped against my throat. "She's not a suspect." He didn't answer. I backed away, my shoes sticking slightly to the disinfected floor. Every sound was amplified. The buzz of the lights, the soft thud of doors closing, the click of pens signing reports, the machinery of order turning against its own victims. I stood near the vending machine, watching Cashin exit the interview room. His shirt had been changed, no more blood. His hair slicked back. He laughed with one of the officers, as if this were a misunderstanding at a dinner party. As he passed me, he paused. His cologne, expensive, chemical, hit me first, then his voice. "Still trying to play hero Isolde?" he murmured. My stomach twisted. "You should be in a cell." He smiled, a small shrug. "You never understood optics. They believe me because I don't shout." "Neither do I," I said. He walked out, the sound of his shoes echoing down the corridor like applause. When I looked back, Leora was gone, moved somewhere deeper, somewhere hidden. I pressed my hand to the glass, cold against my skin. The reflection staring back wasn't the same woman who picked up that call. The young officer from earlier appeared again. "Ma'am, I need you to wait outside. The watch commander will call you when statements are complete." I didn't move. "You're protecting the wrong person." His jaw tightened. "Ma'am, please." He opened the door, motioning me out like I was an inconvenience, not a witness. Outside, the fog had thickened, swallowing the streetlights. My car sat under a pale halo, engine off, still warm. I leaned against it, trying to find breath inside a chest that felt locked. Somewhere inside that building, my sister was bleeding, handcuffed, probably whispering apologies to the man who did it. And the city would file it away as just another domestic dispute. Case closed. I pulled my phone from my pocket. The last thing she said replayed in my mind. They believe him. Not this time. Not again. My fingers hovered over the screen before I set it back down. The night air smelled of asphalt and loss. I could still hear the echo of Cashin's voice behind glass. Calm, rehearsed, untouchable. I stared at the windows of the station, each one glowing like an accusation. Maybe he was right. Maybe they believe him because he never raises his voice. But they haven't heard mine yet. This time, I will not be the one erased. The glass doors whispered open when I pushed them. The same sterile light, the same faint smell of coffee burned hours ago. The clock above the reception desk read 4:07 a.m. My hands were still shaking, though I'd stopped noticing the cold. Cashin stood near the vending machines, his sleeves rolled, shirt clean now, no trace of red. He talked to the sergeant like they were two men comparing golf swings. His laughter sounded like an echo that didn't belong in this place. When he turned and saw me, he smiled. "You again," he said, voice smooth, polite. "You shouldn't be here, Isolde. It's late." Late. as if that mattered. I walked closer until we were separated only by a thin strip of floor and his arrogance. "Where's my sister?" He tilted his head, that practiced expression of sympathy. "She's being processed." She got upset, struck me first. The officers saw enough to confirm it. "You lying piece of..." I bit the word back before it could leave my mouth. The game was clear now. He wanted me loud, out of control, the way he'd painted Leora. I steadied my breath. "You always were good at rehearsals." He leaned closer, voice low enough that the sergeant couldn't hear. "Always been the dramatic one, haven't you? You and that savior complex. Maybe this will teach you both to mind your tone." I stared at him. The last time I saw that smirk, I was 25, standing in my mother's kitchen after accusing our stepfather of things she refused to hear. The same smile then, the same warning behind it. "You'll never be believed." Before I could answer, the hallway door opened. 2 officers escorted Leora out. Her wrists were cuffed in front, a tissue pressed to her temple. There was a smear of dried blood on her forearm. She looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders curved inward like she was bracing for another blow. "Leora," I called. Her eyes found mine wide and pleading. She opened her mouth, but the officer's hand guided her forward. The movement wasn't rough, but it was final. "Why is she restrained?" I asked. The younger cop glanced at his notes. "Her story's inconsistent." He called first. "No visible injuries on Mr. Dreyer." She admitted to yelling and throwing a mug. "She has a history of instability," the sergeant added, as if that explained the cuffs. I felt something split in my chest. "She has a history of being ignored," I said quietly. "That's not the same thing." Cashin stepped forward, sighing like a martyr. "I told them I won't press charges if she agrees to counseling. She needs help." The words fell between us like a trap. He looked around, making sure the others heard his reasonableness. I saw the performance in every gesture. Open hands, weary expression, a man of patience. "You need to leave," the sergeant said. "This isn't your case." "My sister called me," I said. "That makes it my business." He shook his head. "If you interfere, we'll have to remove you." I looked at Cashin's spotless shirt, the crisp lines of authority drawn around him like a stage set. He had turned violence into theater. I wasn't going to play the victim in his production. "Fine," I said. "I won't interfere. I'll document." I reached for my phone. The sergeant frowned. "Recording is not allowed inside the precinct." "Then arrest me," I replied. My thumb hit record. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. Cashin's expression flickered, barely. "Still chasing stories? You really haven't learned." "I learned plenty," I said. "Mostly how to keep receipts." Behind him, Leora stumbled. The officer steadied her. But I saw the way she flinched when Cashin's voice filled the hall again, soft and self-righteous. "I just want her safe. She's fragile. You understand, right, Sergeant?" The sergeant nodded, almost apologetic. "Domestic disputes are complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated. "You see blood, you see cuffs, and you call it complicated?" Every eye in the room turned to me. I forced my hands to stay still. Quietly, steadily, I said, "Put it in your report. That I'm here. That I saw her bleeding while you called it complicated." The young officer shifted, uncomfortable. "Ma'am, please wait outside." Leora's voice broke through, thin as paper. "Izzy, it's fine. I'm okay." The nickname hit me harder than the sight of her bruises. She hadn't called me that in years. The apology in her eyes was worse than any accusation. Cashin spoke again, gentle now. See? She doesn't blame anyone. She understands she overreacted. Overreacted. The word felt oily. How many women had drowned in that word? I wanted to scream, to shake every badge in this building until they remembered what their uniforms meant. But screaming wouldn't fix it. Screaming was what he wanted. So I stepped back, drew a breath that hurt going in. You're right, I said softly. She doesn't blame anyone. Not yet. Cashin frowned, confused by the calm. I looked straight at him. But I do. The sergeant's radio crackled, breaking the moment. Leora was led through another door, disappearing behind frosted glass. Cashin turned toward the exit, speaking to an officer about when he could collect his watch. As he walked past me, he lowered his voice again. You should go home, Isolde. This isn't good for your reputation. I almost laughed. My reputation died the day I started telling the truth. He hesitated, the mask slipping for the briefest second, before fixing that polished grin back in place. Then he was gone. I stayed where I was until the hallway emptied. The recording light on my phone blinked once, steady and red. I saved the file, labeled it Station 4 a.m., and slipped it into my pocket. When I finally stepped outside, dawn was thinning the fog. My hoodie was spattered now. Her blood, not mine. The air smelled of cold metal and shame. They cuffed her, my sister, bleeding, while he smiled across the hall. When the sky finally lifted from gray to pale, I was still in yesterday's clothes. I drove home on streets too quiet, the kind that make you feel like the only survivor of something invisible. The fog had settled low, hugging the asphalt. By the time I reached my driveway, the blood on my hoodie had dried to a dull rust. I didn't take it off. I wanted it there, a reminder of a line already crossed. The house was silent except for the rain tapping against the kitchen window. It was the same rhythm it had made the night I left home at 19. After my mother told me to stop making things up, the sound pulled that memory up like an old splinter under skin. I switched on the lamp over my desk and sat in front of the laptop. I hadn't opened the folder labeled redacted in years. It sat buried inside an external drive, the kind of digital grave you build for the things you can't delete but can't face. My fingers hesitated over the trackpad before clicking it open. Inside were audio files, reports, police forms stamped with dates that had defined me more than birthdays ever did. One file stood out. My own voice. Police interview, 2008. I pressed play. The sound was younger, thinner. He touched me. That voice said. The officer's reply came next, patient but bored. Your mother says you exaggerate. She says you've always been emotional. Then my mother's voice, steady, almost kind. She makes things up. I stopped the playback. The rain outside filled the silence like applause for something I never wanted to remember. Quietly, slowly I hit play again. I needed to hear the ending this time. The officer thanked my mother for her cooperation. My voice was swallowed in the shuffle of papers. The file ended with a click. I sat there for a long time, hands pressed together until my knuckles turned white. People talk about closure like it's a door you can lock and leave behind. But closure is just a recording that never stops replaying. By 8:30, I called an old contact in the records department, a man named Marcus, one of the few who'd ever believed my reporting before I quit journalism. He owed me a favor. I need a copy of my old complaint, I said. The one filed against Silas Whitner. 2008. He was quiet for a second. That's a sealed case, Isolde. Why reopen that hell? Because it never closed for me. 2 hours later, an email arrived. A scanned document. Most of it was blacked out. Thick lines of ink hiding the things that mattered. The psychologist's note was gone. The one I remembered word for word. Subject exhibits clarity, consistency, and trauma response. Someone had erased the only proof that I was coherent. I stared at the dark bars covering the truth. They looked like coffin lids stacked in a row. Erased just like me. I printed the file anyway and pinned it to the wall above my desk. The paper trembled under the draft from the window, but it stayed there. When my phone buzzed again, it wasn't a number I recognized. Just a single message. You need to look deeper. Redacted doesn't mean gone. No name. No clue. I closed the blinds. The rain had turned into a steady pour, drumming against the roof. My hands moved before my mind did, digging through old drawers, searching for anything else from that year. That's when I found the flash drive labeled Family Archive. It wasn't mine. The handwriting belonged to my mother. It held hundreds of family photos, letters, scanned documents. Among them, a deleted email thread between her and Cashin's law firm, dated 2 months before his marriage to Leora. Subject line. Character references. Attached was a copy of my sealed case. She'd sent him my history before the wedding. She'd given him my weakness wrapped in official letterhead. The air left my lungs. For a moment, I thought I might be sick. My mother hadn't just chosen not to believe me. She'd weaponized my truth to protect a man who would later destroy her other daughter. The knock on the door startled me. I froze. It was just the mail carrier, leaving a package under the porch. Still, I locked the door when he left. Back at my desk, I tried to swallow the tremor in my chest. I opened another tab, searching for Leora's digital traces. Her email account was still active. I guessed passwords until the 12th try. Sunflow 3R. She always replaced vowels with numbers. Always sentimental. Always predictable. When the inbox loaded, my pulse tripped. There was a message to me, sent 3 months ago, but never received. Subject line. You were right. The body of the email was short. He said if I talked to you again, he'd make me pay. I think I'm already paying. Tell Mom I tried. The timestamp matched the night she stopped answering my calls. I checked the delivery history. The email had been intercepted by another address, my mother's. Auto-forwarded. Deleted from mine before I could ever read it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen until the words blurred. Quietly, I whispered. She never stopped choosing him. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. The house creaked as it settled, like an old body sighing in its sleep. I remembered being 16, standing in the hallway, while my mother told me to apologize to Silas for misunderstanding his affection. I remembered the way she said it without looking at me. You'll ruin this family, Isolde. Now, watching the email blink on the screen, I realized she had spent decades protecting the men who hurt us and calling it love. I printed the message and laid it beside the redacted file. 2 pieces of proof, 2 decades apart, both pointing to the same betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another message. This one was only 3 words. You're not crazy. No punctuation, no signature. I didn't answer. I just stared at the wall, at the inked lines, at my sister's blood still staining the hoodie draped over my chair. For the first time since the call, I felt something shift. Not hope, not forgiveness, just resolve. They didn't just erase me. They erased the only witness who ever believed me. The next message came just after 1 o'clock. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the printouts taped to the wall, The black bars, the sealed words, the letter from my sister that never reached me. The phone buzzed once. A new number. No name. Just a single link. For a long minute, I only looked at it. My first thought was that it could be Cashin, reaching farther now, trying to bait me. But curiosity is its own kind of hunger. I clicked. The audio began before the screen even changed. At first, only static, faint and uneven, like an old cassette. Then Leora's voice. Soft, trembling. Please stop, he's still holding me. Her breath hitched, the words tumbling over fear. I heard something heavy scrape across a hard surface. Marble maybe. The kind she bragged about when she moved into his house. Then a thud. A sound I will never unhear. Skin against stone. Then his voice. Calm. Deep. Cutting through her panic. Leora. The recording ended in silence. I sat back. Phone pressed to my ear even after it stopped. The air inside the house thickened. I replayed it twice, hoping for some detail that would explain. Something I could twist into reason. There was none. I felt the floor under my feet tilt. By 2 o'clock, I was in my car again, driving toward the precinct. The fog had lifted, replaced by a hard, dry light that made everything look too sharp, too awake. I parked without remembering how I got there. Inside, the same young officer from last night glanced up. Miss Rain again, he said under his breath, like I was a recurring problem. I didn't answer. A woman stepped out from the side hall, late 20s maybe, dark hair in a neat braid. A badge clipped her belt. Chun Ramra. She paused when she saw me. You're the sister. I am, I said. Her eyes flicked toward the others before she spoke again. Come with me. She led me down a narrow corridor lined with glass windows that reflected both of us walking. Her steady, me like a shadow just trying to keep up. In a small side office, she closed the door and lowered her voice. You weren't wrong, she said. I pulled the hallway footage. For a second, the room tilted again. What did you see? She turned her screen toward me. Grainy black and white video filled it. Leora appeared first, being half-dragged, half-walked by Cashin through the entrance. He had one hand clamped around her arm. She tried to pull back. He jerked her forward. Then, the lights went out. The timestamp froze for 43 seconds. When they came back, Leora stumbled through the hallway alone, hair undone, one shoe missing. I gripped the edge of the desk. The lights. Manual breaker switch. Someone tripped it. Ramra's voice carried no surprise, only resignation. That's why the camera stopped. But the timestamps match your sister's 911 call exactly. We watched it again, silent. Each time the screen went black, my heartbeat filled the void. The camera never blinked. It was forced to. Ramra straightened. I'm adding this to the file, she said. Internal Affairs will review it, though it may take days. Days. I repeated, tasting the word. She's in custody because of his story. I know. Her voice softened, tired in a way that told me she fought this kind of battle before. We've both seen how this goes. She opened a second window on the screen, syncing the audio I'd sent from my phone. When the sound of the marble and the slap filled the room, she flinched. Good God, she whispered. Her fingers trembled on the keyboard as she typed the report note. Evidence contradicts original statement. For a moment, she just stared at the monitor, then said quietly, This doesn't fix it, but it proves she wasn't lying. I nodded. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Now prove the system wasn't either. Ramira mit Mayash. I'll try. That's all I can promise. I left her office with the printout of the new report in my hand. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee. Everything ordinary. Everything false. Outside the interview room, a group of officers were laughing over something on a phone screen. Their laughter stopped when I passed. I wondered which of them had written domestic disturbance, mutual in their notes. The air in the corridor felt cold enough to bite. I kept walking until I reached the double doors that led back to the main entrance. Through the glass, I could see Cashin's lawyer arriving. Sleek suit, briefcase gleaming. The same performance, new act. I looked down at the copy of the report in my hand. It wasn't much, but it was ink on paper, time-stamped, real. Before leaving, I stopped by Ramra's desk one more time. If something happens to that file, you have the original drive? She nodded. Already duplicated. Don't worry. I've been doing this long enough to know where the pressure comes from. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit like a slap. I sat in the car and let the engine idle. The printed sheet lay on the passenger seat, catching the light. I could almost hear Leora's voice again. Please stop, he's still holding me. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. They never do when you need them most. Quietly, I whispered to the empty car. They can ignore a woman's voice, but not the sound of a door slamming shut right before she screams. I didn't go home right away. I drove around for nearly an hour, windows down despite the chill, letting the wind rush through the car like it could clear the residue from that building off my skin. The report sat folded on the passenger seat, its words still warm from the printer, but already cooled in my memory. It didn't matter that it was real, that it was typed, signed, time-stamped. Paper had never protected us. Not once. I circled the same block twice before I gave in and pulled into the station parking lot again. This time I didn't walk inside. I just sat, engine off, watching the entrance like it might spit him out again. Instead, I saw her, Vera, my mother. She stepped out of the back of a silver sedan like she was arriving for Sunday service. Hair fixed, lipstick flawless. A tin of cookies in her hand like this was a holiday visit and not a post-trauma theater. I didn't move. She hadn't seen me yet. She walked with short, precise steps toward the glass doors, nodded at the front desk officer like she'd done this before. By the time I got out of the car and walked in, she was already seated in the waiting area, legs crossed at the ankle like she'd been taught, her hands folded neatly over the cookie tin resting in her lap. Her head turned slowly when I approached. "There you are," she said. "I was hoping you'd show." "You were hoping I'd clean up the mess," I said, voice low. Her smile didn't budge. "Let's not make this into a scandal, Isolde. You know how people talk in towns like this." I sat across from her. "They are not talking about me. They will be if you keep pressing." Her voice still soft, still sweet, but every word edged like glass. "These things have a way of spiraling. Do you really want that for Leora?" She called for help. He put his hands on her. "And you're bringing snickerdoodles to the police station." "They're for the officers," she said quickly, as if that made it better. "They've been very accommodating." I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed to see where she would go next. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Cashin's lawyer is already inside. He says he's willing to de-escalate if Leora agrees to treatment. Anger issues, perhaps. You know how emotional she's always been." And there it was. "You've said that before," I told her. "About me. When I came to you about Silas. You called it a phase. You said I was hormonal, dramatic, that I misread things." She stiffened just slightly. "That was different." "It always is, isn't it? when it's someone you let in. Don't twist this as sold, she said. Finally a crack in the surface. I've tried to keep this family together. You've tried to control the narrative. That's not the same as love. Silence stretched between us. A long, ugly thread neither of us wanted to touch. Then she leaned forward. You're not helping her. You're making her look unstable. You're drawing attention to things better left hidden. I finished for her. She didn't answer. I stood. She's not crazy. She's not broken. And if anyone says that again, I'll make sure the entire town hears the truth. Even the parts you covered in perfume and smiles. I walked out before she could reply. Back home, the house was quiet. Leora's daughter was coloring at the table, her small fingers stained with marker ink. She looked up when I came in, eyes too old for her age. She okay? She asked. She will be, I said. Try and make it sound like a promise. I went to hang my coat and noticed something strange. One of the pink teddy bears from the guest room was sitting on the floor. It looked heavier than I remembered. I picked it up. The seam along the back wasn't factory stitched. It was hand-sewn, clumsy, rushed. I grabbed a seam ripper from the drawer, sat at the table, and gently pulled the thread free. Inside was a small black device, no bigger than a thumb. A camera. It was still warm. I didn't say anything. I just stood there for a while, staring at it like it might blink. Later, after her daughter had gone to bed, I connected the device to my laptop. It loaded slowly, files populating one after the other. The most recent footage was from 3 days ago. Cashin walking into their house. No expression, just straight lines, his steps, his voice, his control. Then Leora. She flinched when he reached for the remote. It wasn't fast or aggressive, but she braced herself anyway. The bear had been sitting on the living room shelf the whole time, watching, recording. I watched until my jaw ached from clenching. I watched until I couldn't anymore. She wasn't paranoid. She was monitored. I didn't sleep that night. The house hummed quietly around me. An orchestra of appliances pretending everything was normal. I sat on the couch, the laptop still open. The pink bear gutted beside me like evidence from a crime scene. The footage replayed in my mind. The slight flinch, the hesitation, the way she folded herself into smallness just to survive another day. By 7 o'clock, I had made a decision. No more mercy. No more quiet endurance, dressed up as patience. The hospital stood 2 blocks from downtown. A squat brick building that looked older than the promises printed on its patient bill of rights. I walked through its automatic doors carrying a file of my own. Leora's hospital ID, discharge slip, a photo of her bruises I'd taken before the police confiscated her belongings. The receptionist looked up with the practiced cheer of someone who had said good morning too many times. I need to speak to Dr. Garrison, I said. He treated my sister 2 weeks ago. The woman frowned at her monitor. He's not on call today. Then page him, I replied. And there must have been something in my voice because she hesitated only a second before lifting the phone. 10 minutes later, a tall man in wrinkled scrubs appeared, hair flattened by exhaustion. He recognized my face instantly. The Rain sister who wouldn't stop asking questions. Ms. Rain, he said carefully. I remember your sister. Terrible situation. Then you remember the injuries, I said. He nodded uneasy. Yes, I do. I need your notes. His eyes darted toward the hallway. They're in the system, but parts were removed during administrative review. Removed? He sighed. There was an internal request from legal. Happens more than you'd think. Liability concerns. She's the victim, I said. Who's the liability? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked me to a small side office. The lights buzzed overhead. He sat at the terminal and typed her name. The file appeared, portions of text smudged by thick black rectangles. He turned the screen toward me. Visible. Patient denies prior history of injury. Below that, an entire paragraph blacked out. The doctor's handwriting visible only at the edges. I leaned closer. What did you write here? He swallowed. Off the record, I noted older bruising, yellowing at the ribs. I suggested follow-up for potential domestic trauma. Then why erase it? He exhaled. Because people like Mr. Dreyer have lawyers, and hospitals like this one have donors. I closed my eyes for a moment. Outrage didn't even feel like heat anymore. It was cold, clean, sharp. Print me a copy, I said. I can't. Then I'll file a Freedom of Information request. He hesitated. You'll need the exact form. It'll take weeks. I have time, I said. He took everything else from her. I can give her that. When I left the hospital, the air smelled like rain on metal. My hands shook only once when I folded the request form into my bag. At home, dusk crept through the windows, turning everything a dull bronze. I started sorting through Leora's clothes, methodically, one piece at a time, like I could make sense of her life by touching the fabric she chose to hide behind. In the pocket of her winter coat, my fingers brushed against something stiff, an envelope sealed with tape. Her handwriting across the front, for Izzy, only if. I sat down before opening it. Inside, one page, written in blue ink. If I disappear, don't call it a breakdown. Call it what it is. And don't let Mom speak at the funeral. The letters were steady, not panicked. She had written it calmly, deliberately, as if she'd already accepted the cost of telling the truth. I read it twice, then pressed it flat on the table beside the printed hospital form. 2 pieces of paper that said everything the world refused to hear. When the clock struck 9, I called Talia Grange. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you're ready, she said. Voice clipped, direct. I'm past ready. Then bring everything. By the time she arrived, the table was covered, audio drives, the footage from the bear, the redacted medical file, the letter. She walked around it slowly, hands clasped behind her back, like a surgeon studying an open chest. This will get ugly, she said. It already is. You'll lose friends. Maybe your job, too. I've been hated quietly for years, I said. I prefer the kind people can see. She gave a small nod. Then we do this right. We file the civil motion first thing tomorrow. We spent hours drafting the complaint, line by line. Every word weighed for impact. Failure to report. Negligence. Conspiracy to suppress medical evidence. Legal phrases that sounded almost polite until you realized they were about human ruin. When we finished, Talia closed her laptop. One more thing, she said. The medical board. If we prove that doctor's note was altered under pressure, it opens the hospital to investigation. Do it, I said. Outside, the wind picked up. The walls of the house creaked, tired but still standing. Talia gathered her coat. You know what you're doing, right? Yes, I said. I'm filing this not as her sister, but as the only witness left who wasn't afraid to remember. The next morning, the newspaper hit the doorstep like a threat wrapped in ink. It was folded too neatly, the headline too loud. I bent to pick it up with fingers that had lost the luxury of shaking. On the front page, Cashin's photo stared back at me, arms crossed, chin lifted. That politicians grin they teach in media training. Respected tech visionary battles domestic accusation. Beneath it, quotes from close sources about his calm demeanor, his commitment to family, his disappointment in how these matters had been weaponized. I didn't feel rage this time. Rage required surprise. This was calculation. At Talia's office, the article was already on her desk. She didn't say good morning. She just slapped her hand over the page. His PR machine has teeth, she muttered. I dropped the stack of evidence onto her table. Let's break its jaw. We filed the civil motion by 10:43 a.m. Every page carried not just our claims, but the weight of silence cracked open. Photos, audio, surveillance clips, Leora's letter, hospital reports, the bare camera footage, Cashin's polished lies set against the raw footage of who he really was when no one applauded. Talia handed the clerk our packet, leaned slightly over the counter. We're requesting a freeze on all personal and corporate assets until preliminary hearing. The clerk blinked. That'll trigger a response. We know, I said. Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up again. This time it felt different, less like something brushing past, and more like something clearing space. Talia turned to me. He's going to come for your name next. Expect leaks. Fabricated texts. Maybe worse. I adjusted the strap of my bag. It survived worse. So have I. We didn't speak on the drive back. We didn't need to. That afternoon, I stood on the edge of the porch, watching the neighbors across the street sweep leaves into neat piles. It should have been ordinary, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. I walked across the street before I could talk myself out of it. Her name was Lorraine, married for 20 years, 2 kids. She'd always waved politely, but never lingered. She opened the door slowly, face pale, eyes cautious. Isolde, I need to ask you something, I said. And you don't have to answer, but I'm asking anyway. She opened the screen door without a word. Inside, the house smelled like lemon and something fried, the kind of warmth that disguises cold truths. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her hands trembled as she poured coffee she didn't drink. I heard them, she said finally, almost every night. I waited. Silence is where the truth finds room. My husband, he told me not to get involved, said it wasn't our business, that we'd end up on the wrong side of the story. You were never on the wrong side, I said, just too close to the wall. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a USB. I saved some of the Ring doorbell footage. I don't even know why. Maybe I hoped one day I'd stop being scared. My fingers closed around the drive, not with victory, but with weight. I'll redact your name, I said. She gave a bitter smile. I doubt it'll matter after this. That night, I uploaded the footage to the court's secure portal. The timestamp matched the night Leora ran barefoot to my house. The sound of Cashin shouting, a door slamming, Leora's voice, faint but clear. I attached Lorraine's video statement, labeled it witness, quiet door. When I hit submit, the upload bar filled like a breath held too long. At 6:12 p.m., Talia called. We got a court date. When? Soon. His lawyer requested expedited dismissal. The judge wants to hear both sides first. I walked to the front window. Outside, the street looked the same. Leaves gather in corners. Children's bikes abandoned on driveways. But everything had changed. I pressed my palm to the glass. He bought a headline. I said, I bought a copy of the judge's calendar. By the time night wrapped the house in stillness, the fallout had begun. An anonymous email leaked screenshots, bad forgeries, of me texting someone named Grant, confessing to making it all up for attention. I didn't know a Grant, but someone had taken time to invent one. There were subtle tells, spacing errors, iMessage colors that didn't match timestamps. Talia was already on it. "They're stupid," she said, tapping her keyboard furiously. "But not for the public. For the seed of doubt." Cashin didn't need the world to believe he was innocent. He just needed them to believe I wasn't sure. That night, I left every light on in the house. By morning, my inbox was a war zone. Hate mail, death threats, a handful of pitying strangers urging prayer or forgiveness, as if abuse was a spiritual failing I could pray away. But wedged between all the noise was one message. Just one. No subject line. No greeting. Just a name I hadn't seen in years. Maura. The message was short. I saw the article. I knew something was wrong back then, but I was too scared to say anything. "If you need me to speak, I will." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I typed back one word. Yes. By midday, Cashin had booked a televised interview. The network was the same one that once featured our wedding photos during a charity gala coverage. His voice was syrupy smooth, eyes glossy with manufactured vulnerability. I've always respected the women in my life. It's devastating to see someone you once loved fall victim to confusion or manipulation. I just want her to get help. He looked into the camera, like he was blessing the audience with benevolence. The comments flooded in. Support, doubt, conspiracy theories. Talia texted. He just soft-launched a mental health defense. Classic. I watched without flinching, not because it didn't hurt, but because it was a performance. And I had the receipts. At 3:24 p.m., Maura called. "I kept her secret," she said quietly. "Leora told me things when she was still in school. I thought maybe she was exaggerating, but now I know she wasn't." "Would you be willing to write a statement?" I asked. "I already did," she said. "It's in your inbox." By 4 p.m., it was filed as witness. Early disclosure. The war wasn't won. But the wall of silence, it was crumbling. That evening, the sky went a strange, bruised blue. I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching dusk paint the world in softer edges. Cashin had built an empire on charm, precision, and erasure. But this war didn't need a weapon. It needed a memory that refused to stay buried. The front door creaked open. Leora stepped out, hair pulled back, eyes hollow but present. "He's scared," she said. "You can see it now, even in his smile." I didn't look at her, just nodded slowly. He should be. And for the first time in weeks, the silence around us didn't feel like something stolen. It felt like peace sharpening its edges. The conference room was smaller than I expected. It smelled like stale coffee and resignation, the kind of room built for uneasy truces and failed promotions. Faux wood table, dull chairs, no windows. A place where things were meant to be signed, not said. I arrived first, not because I was early, because I needed to see the space before anyone else could take ownership of it. Talia came in next, a breeze wrapped in stillness. She didn't say anything, just gave me a slight nod. Her hands were steady, her mouth unreadable. Cashin arrived last. Of course he did. He always loved an entrance, just late enough to be noticed, never late enough to be scolded. He wore a charcoal suit that didn't fit the man he really was, too sharp for someone so hollow. He smiled as he walked in. That same weaponized grin he used in boardrooms and baby showers alike. He extended his hand to me. I didn't take it. Let's talk like adults, he said, settling in across from me like he was auditioning for a leadership seminar. I didn't respond. I sat. The phone in my pocket was already recording. He leaned back and crossed his legs like he owned the air in the room. You've really committed to this delusion, haven't you? He asked, eyes flicking to Talia, like she was the hired help who'd overstayed her welcome. Talia, unfazed, opened her folder and laid out the evidence. Piece by piece, neatly, calmly, a slow reveal, audio files, medical assessments, footage, reports, nothing flashy, just the truth, stacked and stapled. Cashin scoffed. You're doing all this for what? Closure? Revenge? A blog post? He turned toward me now, his face a mask of paternal concern stretched over contempt. She was always unstable, Isolde. You know that better than anyone. I tried to help her. You both. He stopped. He realized he was talking too much, but not fast enough. Because my thumb had already tapped the screen under the table, the light stayed red. He kept going, convinced that my silence was submission. He always thought winning was about volume. He never understood that power could be quiet. By noon, we were in the courtroom. It wasn't a trial yet, just a hearing, but the air was already thick with consequence. Cashin looked bored, or maybe he wanted to look bored. That brand of artificial detachment men, like him, use to pretend they aren't cornered. His attorney, a tall man with slick back hair and a cologne problem, whispered something into his ear. Cashin nodded like it amused him. The judge entered. She was older than I expected. Sharp eyes, no jewelry, gray hair in a loose bun. Her presence settled the room. She asked for the exhibits. Talia stepped forward and presented the audio first. The playback was clean. His voice, his tone, his intent. If she'd just stayed quiet. The silence after the clip ended was loud. Cashin shifted in his chair. He didn't smirk this time. Then came the security footage from the shelter. Leora bracing when he walked by. No sound, just movement. Just truth. Next, the hospital report. Redacted in parts, but clear where it counted. And then the note. Not the version they tried to slip past me during mediation. The original. Complete. Signed by the physician. The one they tried to bury. Subject displays clear trauma response. Recommend protective separation. Talia returned to her seat. The judge leaned forward, fingers laced. Mr. Dreyer, she said evenly. Would you like to respond? Cashin opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his lawyer, who nodded but didn't speak. He said nothing. The judge nodded once. Then I'll proceed. And just like that, everything shifted. Based on the evidence submitted today, she said, this court is denying your motion to dismiss and is ordering an immediate freeze of all personal and corporate assets under Mr. Dreyer's name. Furthermore, this matter will be escalated to criminal court for further proceedings. There was an audible gasp behind us. It came from someone, maybe multiple someones. I didn't look back. Cashin stood. You can't do this, he said, voice cracking just enough to betray the panic underneath. I built that company. I gave her everything. The judge didn't flinch. You don't get to buy silence. Not anymore. The bailiff moved toward him. Cashin looked around like the room had betrayed him, like the walls should have protected him because they were expensive and insulated. He walked out without another word. And then something happened. From the back row a woman stood. She wore a long gray coat and boots that had seen snow. Her hair was dark, tied back in a low bun. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm his first wife," she said. All heads turned. Even the judge blinked. "I'm filing too." The judge paused. "Do you have documents?" The woman held up a tablet. "Just uploaded. Timeline of coercion. Records from our daughter's school. And a restraining order that was mysteriously denied in 2012. I kept everything." The judge nodded. "Add it to the docket." Cashin never looked back. He didn't even know she was there. Outside, the sun had lowered, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. Talia handed me the official copy of the judge's ruling. 15 years, she said. No parole for 10, if the charges hold. I took the papers. I didn't feel triumph. I felt done. Finished. Not victorious. Not vindicated. Just done. Later that evening, I stood on my porch. The wind tugged at my coat. Across the street, the neighborhood was settling in for dinner. Porch lights flicking on. Quiet conversations behind walls. The sound of a screen door slamming in the distance. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the phone. The file was still there. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need to remember it on someone else's terms. He thought he was walking into a negotiation. He walked into a trap with receipts. I didn't need to shout. The truth had a voice now, and it wasn't his. 2 weeks later, the air felt different. Not cleaner, not lighter, just still, like the breath of the city had been held so long, it forgot how to let go. Like every corner of Spokane had pressed pause, waiting for someone else to say the next word. The streets didn't hum. The traffic lights blinked like they had no one left to direct. Even the birds seemed unsure if they should sing. I woke up before dawn, the kind of early that doesn't belong to anyone yet. Not the day, not the night, not even me. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. Just the smell of it, bitter and grounded, was enough. I pulled my coat over the same gray hoodie I wore the night Leora called me. The one with the rust-colored stain just below the drawstring. It had faded now, but I still knew what it was. And worse, what it had cost. I walked to the Civic Plaza on autopilot. Each step more memory than muscle. Rows of folding chairs lined the brick walkway. A temporary stage faced east, ready to catch the first light. Banners hung between lampposts like afterthoughts from some community theater performance. Spokane together. Community accountability. Healing through action. The words didn't move me, but the quiet did. People gathered in the way small towns do when they aren't sure if they're proud or ashamed. Their voices hushed, their shoulders half curled inward, like they wanted to show up, but not be seen, like they were both witnesses and accomplices. A few nodded at me, the kind of nod that didn't linger. No one asked questions. No one made small talk. It wasn't that kind of morning. The mayor was first to take the stage. She wore a blue blazer 2 sizes too stiff and spoke with the cadence of someone who had practiced sincerity in the mirror. "We are here today," she began, "to mark the beginning of something better. A new chapter in how our city listens, responds, and protects." She said words like reform, accountability, transparent process, but they didn't stick. Not with me. Not with the girls who had to live through what the city had ignored. She called it progress. I called it overdue. Then Ramira stepped forward. She wore her uniform like armor, pressed, spotless, proud, but her eyes gave her away. They scanned the crowd like she was still on duty, still watching for threat or judgment. But her voice didn't shake. She didn't talk about legislation or policy. She said names. Names of women whose stories never made headlines. Names that were buried in complaint drawers. Names that were followed by phrases like insufficient evidence or we found no cause for concern. She said their names like a reckoning. Leora's name came last. I felt her breath catch beside me. I reached for her. Not grabbing, not anchoring, just presence. A hand on her back to say you're not alone. And she didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She stood up taller. The mayor returned to the podium and gestured to a cloth-covered sign beside her. A girl, maybe 12, stepped forward and pulled the fabric down. Beneath it, a plaque read, Rain Protocol Initiative, because silence isn't the same as peace. Applause followed. Not loud, not showy, just honest. As if the crowd finally understood that this wasn't a celebration, it was a correction. Then Talia walked up. Black blazer. No notes. Her words were crisp, like she had carved them rather than written them. This protocol is not about punishment, she said. It's about prevention. It's about listening when the whisper first starts, not waiting until it becomes a scream. We owe each other that much, especially those we failed before. She didn't look at me, but I knew her words were weighted, personal. I watched as the crowd nodded, some slowly, others as if they needed to convince themselves. And then Vera stepped forward. I felt Leora stiffen under my hand, like someone had pulled a string inside her back. I didn't move. Neither did she. Vera looked smaller than I remembered. Not in stature, but in certainty. The way people look when the mask they've worn for decades finally falls, and they realize they don't know their own face underneath. She didn't have paper. No notes. Just the mic and the eyes of the city. I didn't believe my daughter, she said. The wind paused. Either of them, she added. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. I told myself I was protecting them, that silence was safer, that by keeping things inside, I was keeping the world out. But all I did was teach them how to disappear. Her words didn't shake, but her fingers did. I watched them grip the mic tighter, white at the knuckles. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't deserve it. That shame will live in me longer than I live in this city. But I need you to hear this. They stood back up. They didn't wait for someone to save them. They chose to write their own ending. She looked at me then. Just once. Not pleading. Not apologizing. Just seeing. For the first time in too many years, I didn't feel erased. After the ceremony, the crowd didn't disperse so much as dissolve. Slowly, like mist lifting. No one rushed. No one lingered either. They just left quietly, like they finally understood that some things don't get fixed. They just get named. Leora and I sat on a bench overlooking the fountain. The water was low, not running, but it made no difference. The silence was doing the talking today. She held her purse in her lap like a fragile thing. Her hands were clenched, not in fear, but in purpose. Her fingers found the small zip pocket on the side and pulled something out. It was the SD card. Small, black, ordinary. She held it up between two fingers, looking at it like it was a relic. I saved it, she said, her voice soft but solid. I thought I needed it. I really did. For proof. For justice. She looked over at me. But I don't need it anymore. I've got my name back. She held it out to me. Her eyes didn't drop. I took it. Slowly. Like it might still burn. And I didn't say a word. I just slipped it into my coat pocket. Because I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. Not because I needed it for a courtroom or a headline. But because scars still ache when it rains. The city would never understand what we lost. Not fully, but today, they learned what they could name. And that, for now, was enough. Sometimes, the loudest voice in the room is the one that never got heard, until it refused to be silent any longer. What would you do if the world believed your abuser instead of you? Would you stay quiet or would you rewrite the system? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that start in silence and end in something louder.